This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, with a follow-up report about how, if Donald Trump doesn't want to get out of Florida and come back to New York to respond to his felony arrest warrant, which could happen as early as Tuesday, what is the procedure? What happens? And will he give up his right to self-surrender in order to perpetuate the spectacle of Governor Ron DeSantis issuing an arrest warrant for him, having him picked up and detained in a county jail while he awaits a hearing in front of a judge, likely federal, in Palm Beach County, all for the purpose of nothing, because he'll end up getting extradited under the various constitutional procedures, those under U.S. statutes and those under Florida law. So the question is, I see all the bluster in the Twitterverse in Trump world demanding that DeSantis stop and investigate and not extradite, and he has none of those powers. He has very limited powers under the U.S. Constitution, which has an extradition clause baked into it since the founding fathers about fleeing felons, which is what Donald Trump would then be branded. Donald Trump would have to then wonder, now that he's been bashing Ron DeSantis for the last, year or so, this Ron DeSantis is going to have the keys to the jail for him. Do you think even Donald Trump would want to put himself in a situation where his arch enemy and rival for the Republican nomination controls his liberty? I doubt it. It's a lot of bluster. That's why Donald Trump, even in his own tweeting, to gin up support and to get the rabble to come out to the MAGA rabble to come out and maybe protest and create another Jan 6th insurrection in his favor, because he likes to whip up people because he's a narcissist. Even Donald Trump doesn't believe it's in his best interest to be branded a felon, a fleeing felon under the U.S. Constitution, have a governor who is not favorable to him be in charge of the review of his arrest, have himself arrested by Florida officials taken out of Mar-a-Lago, or not even Mar-a-Lago, because, Trump is just going about his business right now. So he's going off to Oklahoma, to Tulsa, to the NCAA wrestling finals, all sorts of other mini rally type things. They could pick him up in any of these airports along the way. I mean, they could coordinate with the Secret Service and they could step in with an arrest warrant when he's changing planes or when he lands in the executive airport, wherever that is, near Tulsa, assuming he's not flying commercial these days. Let's talk about why all of this magical thinking that's going on in Trump world, or try to goad DeSantis into taking this step, demanding him to do it, knowing that he can't possibly do it, and knowing that Donald Trump would never want him to do it, because it would mean he'd be arrested, picked up, held in the county jail, awaiting the next step in the process. He doesn't just get to be a free man. He doesn't get to stay home, put up his feet at Mar-a-Lago, and watch television while this is all going on. So let's start with where the U.S. Jurisprudence and criminal justice system gets the right to extradite, to take one fleeing felon from one state back to the other. We start with the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Clause 2, which quite clearly says that a person charged in any state with treason, a felony, or any crime who shall flee, and Trump would be seen as a fleeing felon because he's staying in Florida away from the New York officials. So he would be seen as someone fleeing justice. Add that to the badge of dishonor on Donald Trump. And they are found in another state, shall, on the demand of the executive authority officer of the state in which the felony happened, in this case, the governor of New York, a Democrat, Governor Hochul, then it has to be delivered up to the state authority having jurisdiction over him at present, which is DeSantis. And then you look at 18 U.S.C. 3182, which is a statute that was passed in order to execute the constitutional extradition clause. And when you go there, just to put it up on the board, 18 U.S.C. 3182 says that whenever the executive authority of any state or territory, the governor, demands any person as a fugitive from justice, Trump, of the executive authority of any state, district, or territory to which the person has fled, DeSantis and produces a copy of the indictment or an affidavit before a magistrate of any state or territory, read that as a federal magistrate in Palm Beach County, charging the person demanded with having committed treason, felony, or other crime, it will be a felony coming out of New York, certified as authentic by the governor of the state from which the person fled, Governor Hochul, New York, the executive authority of the state to which the person has fled, Florida, DeSantis, shall cause him to be arrested and secured and notify the executive authority making such demand. Let's stop right there. Does anybody think that even in his most craziness, his most insanity, that Donald Trump will allow Ron DeSantis, his arch enemy, to have the power to arrest him and take him out of Mar-a-Lago, awaiting a hearing in front of a federal judge in Palm Beach County? Could be Judge Middlebrooks, the same judge who has ruled against Donald Trump time and time again, including hitting him with a $1 million sanction in a civil case for bad faith filings. That Judge Middlebrooks, does anybody really seriously think? I mean, it's easy to tweet all these things by the MAGA. DeSantis, grow some brass, do your job, stop the extradition. It's not happening. And frankly, Donald Trump and his lawyers don't want it to happen because that is a terrible scourge on whatever left of his tattered reputation to also now be a fleeing felon arrested by his competitor governor. Not happening. What is going to happen, just to lay it all out, now that we've gone through, and one last link in the chain before I conclude my hot take, for completion purposes, Florida, along with 48 other states, is a participant in the in a uniform extradition set of laws that lays out particularly how they're going to extradite by state back to another state a fleeing felon. And yes, there's a court process, and yes, there's a governor review process, but it is limited to make sure that the felony indictment is regular on its face, that it was issued appropriately, that it is certified, that the person was present at the time of the alleged crime, which they'll be able to prove, and identity. We don't have to worry about identity. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. And that's sort of the limits of what the governor can do under the uniform body of law. So if you satisfy Florida's statute, which is the Uniform Extradition Act statute, you satisfy the U.S. Constitution, which this will, you satisfy the federal statute that executes the law of the federal extradition, constitutional extradition body of law, then you're done. And if Donald Trump wants to spend 30 or 60 days fighting over these things, he'll fight them while he's sitting in the county jail in Palm Beach County or at the federal detention center in either Miami or Palm Beach or West Palm Beach. That's where he'll be with the Governor DeSantis holding the keys to the jail. Not happening. What is going to happen is the following. As we reported on Legal AF yesterday with our co-anchor and former state prosecutor in the Manhattan DA's office, Monday is one of the grand jury days. They meet either twice a week or 3 times a week in New York. Monday, they'll wrap up whatever witnesses are left, maybe one more left. I don't think it's Stormy Daniels. Then the prosecutors and Alvin Bragg will ask the grand jury in New York, which has been sitting since January, to vote on an indictment, to return an indictment against Donald Trump for a felony. It's not going to be a misdemeanor. A felony related to the books and records fraud cover-up related to a secondary crime, all started with the Stormy Daniels hush money payment authorized and paid by Donald Trump. Then that's Monday. Then they will announce that, if they haven't already over the weekend, told his lawyers. And Michael Cohen on the MeidasTouch podcast, the MeidasTouch network, believes that Donald Trump is full of you-know-what and saying he has that they don't have any contact, the defense lawyers, with the prosecutors about surrender. They likely have already, and that's why he tweeted out or social truthed out the other day, I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday. That didn't just pop into his addled brain. That came from information from his lawyers. So they are continuing to discuss with their lawyers. It could be on another Monday morning early discussion that we are seeking the indictment of your client. You know the chances are great that we will obtain it, and we need to talk about self-surrender. He will then surrender And even Joe Tacopina, one of his new criminal defense lawyers, says there will not be an extradition fight. Because the defense lawyers knows that looks terrible. Because if he is indicted, which he will be on Monday, and he is put before a regular jury for these crimes, the fact that he is fighting over extradition and created another potential Jan 6 insurrection down in Florida or in New York because of his tweeting, because of his fomenting, that not only could be another crime charged against him, federal or state, but the jury would know about it, and that would be the final nail in his coffin. He's going to lose that trial anyway, likely in front of a jury in New York, a state court jury in New York. But he'll add on to his charges by fighting the extradition and be branded a fleeing felon that the whole world, including the future jury, will know about. I don't see that. I know he doesn't respect his lawyers. I know he hires lawyers so that he doesn't have to respect them and follow their advice. But this current group around him, Susan Necklace, a well-known and well-considered criminal defense lawyer in New York, who handled the losing case brought by the same Manhattan DA's office for 17-count felony conviction. She's the lead criminal defense lawyer. She's supported apparently by Joe Tacopina. Joe not ready for primetime Tacopina. But even Tacopina, I assume on authority from his client, has let the world know there's not going to be an extradition fight. I'm going to take Tacopina at his word, and as a practicing lawyer myself, I can tell you it will be a tremendous destroyer of Donald Trump and his defenses if he continues to fight extradition. I think he goes in as quickly as he can. He's processed like any common criminal. He's booked, he's fingerprinted, he's mugshotted, he's arraigned that day in front of a judge. I don't think he'll be in handcuffs, but maybe he'll be in handcuffs. He'll be in front of the judge. He'll plead, I assume, not guilty. He will then the judge will look at terms of being released either on his own recognizance or on some sort of bond or bail with conditions based on his social media work this last couple of days. Look for the judge to set conditions. You're not allowed to be on social media. You're not allowed to be tweeting. You're not allowed to have access to the internet. Maybe he considers detention because the guy can't be trusted and we don't want another insurrection that he causes. I don't think that's the way it goes, but there'll be an evaluation by the judge with all of this information since the beginning of the tweet storm by Donald Trump about his Tuesday imminent arrest. They'll be baked into the conditions the judge assigned, who's not yet assigned because there's no indictment yet, will issue to the defense. And the defense team is worried about that. That's why I'm sure they're telling him, although we'll watch social media today, to back off, back down, stop tweeting. You're just going to screw up the indictment and our defense of you. So here's where we are as of right now. There is a extradition clause in the U.S. Constitution supported by federal law, federal constitutional law at the Supreme Court level, Florida law, who is a signatory to the Uniform Extradition Act, along with 48 other states, that will lead, just as the sun follows the moon and the moon follows the sun, to Donald Trump self-surrendering and not going through an extradition process controlled ultimately by Governor DeSantis holding the keys to the jail for the fleeing felon Donald Trump. If he fights it next week, look for a surrender, a booking, an arraignment, and coming out the front door of the courthouse onto the steps to give some sort of speech, which we will follow as well on Legal AF. Every Wednesdays and Saturdays, we have a show called Legal AF on the MeidasTouch network. It's at the intersection of law and politics. I do hot takes like this about every day, as do my co-anchors Ben Meiselas and Karen Friedman-Agnifilo. If you like what we're doing, follow us and listen and watch our podcast on YouTube and every place you get your podcast for Legal AF. And if you like what I'm doing, you can follow me at MS Popok on all social media. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.